Pinewood, Oregon. Population 6,782. One of those towns where people still leave their doors unlocked. Detective Margaret Collins's voice narrates over aerial footage of a picturesque small town nestled against dense forest. The camera pans down to a Victorian-style home with a white picket fence. David and Laura Mitchell were the kind of couple that made others envious. High school sweethearts who went to college together, came back to their hometown, bought their dream house, and seemed destined for the perfect life. The screen fills with photos of the couple. Wedding pictures, vacation snapshots, community volunteer awards. They're always smiling, always touching. On June 12, 2024, a hiker reported a disturbing discovery in the Cascade foothills, 15 miles outside of Pinewood. The footage shifts to a wooded area cordoned off with police tape officers in protective gear move carefully around what appears to be a shallow grave partially exposed by recent rainfall. The camera doesn't show the body directly, but focuses on the grim expressions of the investigators. The remains were in such a state of decomposition and alteration that initial identification was nearly impossible. It wasn't until dental records were compared that we confirmed it was David Mitchell, missing for 7 days. Detective Collins walks through the Pinewood Police Department, a converted historic building with only 8 full-time officers. She's in her mid-40s, with streaks of gray in her dark hair, wearing a sensible blazer over jeans. She pulls a file from a cabinet. "I've been a detective in Pinewood for 11 years. You think you've seen everything, but this case..." The scene cuts to Collins interviewing neighbors on a tree-lined street. "They were just wonderful people," says Eleanor Grayson, 67, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "David always helped with my groceries, and Laura brought me soup when I had that awful flu last winter. I can't imagine who would want to hurt him." "Perfect couple," agrees Robert Simmons, the local hardware store owner. "David came in just a few weeks ago to get supplies for a garden he was building for Laura. Said he wanted to surprise her with her favorite flowers." Thomas Reeves sits uncomfortably in an interview chair at the police station. He's wearing hospital scrubs with a Pinewood Memorial ID badge. "David and I worked together at the hospital pharmacy for 6 years. He was meticulous. Everything had to be perfect. That's what made him so good at his job." Later, Collins sits in her office reviewing notes when a knock interrupts her. "Detective Collins? I'm Dr. Helen Sawyer from Infectious Disease at Pinewood Memorial." Dr. Sawyer is an elegant woman in her early 50s with a stern professional demeanor that softens as she hesitantly takes a seat. "I'm afraid I have information relevant to your investigation, but I'm concerned about patient confidentiality." Collins sets down her pen. "Doctor, if this pertains to a homicide investigation..." "I understand. That's why I'm here." Dr. Sawyer glances at the door to ensure it's closed. "I've been treating a patient, I can't disclose who, for HIV, but given the circumstances, I believe there may be a connection to David Mitchell's death." The scene shifts to the Mitchell home. Collins walks through with careful, observant eyes. Everything is immaculate. Framed photos of the couple, tasteful decor, fresh flowers in vases. In the master bathroom, Collins opens the medicine cabinet. Prescription bottles neatly lined up. She reads the labels, then pulls out her phone to take photos. A neighbor watches from across the street as Collins exits the house. "Where's Laura?" Collins asks Officer Jensen, who's waiting by the patrol car. "That's the thing. No one's seen her since before David was reported missing. Her sister says she's staying with her in Grantsville, but won't let anyone talk to her. Says she's too distraught." Collins looks back at the perfect house. 8 years of marriage, and not a single neighbor ever heard them argue. The camera pans to show a kitchen drawer left slightly ajar. Collins notices and pulls it open to find a stack of mail on top. Is an appointment reminder card from Pinewood Memorial's Infectious Disease Department dated 3 weeks earlier, addressed to Laura Mitchell. The county morgue is housed in the basement of Pinewood Memorial Hospital, a 3-story brick building that dates back to the 1940s. The harsh fluorescent lighting makes the already pale Dr. Victor Alvarez look ghostly as he gestures to the autopsy photos spread across the light box. "I've been a medical examiner for 23 years, Detective Collins, and I've never seen a body in this condition," Alvarez says, his voice clinical despite the disturbing images. The face and hands were deliberately disfigured post-mortem. Chemical burns, most likely, the kind that accelerate decomposition. Collins studies the photos without flinching. Someone wanted to make sure he couldn't be identified. Not just that. Alvarez points to several dark marks on what remains of the torso. These are stab wounds. I counted 17 in total. The fatal one severed the aorta. Death would have been relatively quick, but the rest... He pauses. The rest were inflicted with significant force, both before and after death. Rage, Collins says quietly. This wasn't just a murder. This was personal. There's more. Alvarez slides a lab report across the table. Toxicology showed significant levels of AZT, lamivudine, and dolutegravir in his system. In English, Doc. It's a common antiretroviral cocktail for HIV treatment. He'd been taking it regularly based on the levels in his tissue. Collins tries to reconcile this information with the image of David Mitchell, beloved pharmacist, perfect husband, community volunteer. How long had he been HIV positive? That I can't tell you from the autopsy. You'd need his medical records for that. The administrative offices of Pinewood Memorial are quiet in the late afternoon. Collins sits across from the hospital administrator, Barbara Winters, a woman known for her rigid adherence to protocol. I understand the sensitivity of this investigation, Detective, but I can't simply hand over confidential medical records without a warrant, Winters says, hands folded on her immaculate desk. Mrs. Winters, we're investigating a homicide that may be connected to a patient's medical history. People in this town could be at risk. All the more reason to follow proper procedures. Winters' expression softens slightly. I'm not being difficult, Detective. Get your warrant, and I'll personally ensure you have everything you need. As Collins leaves the office, her phone rings. It's Judge Hamilton, returning her call about the warrant. By the time she reaches her car, the paperwork is being processed. Small-town efficiency at its finest, or at its most disturbing, depending on how you look at it. Collins finds Thomas Reeves in the hospital pharmacy, methodically counting pills into prescription bottles. At 36, Reeves has the soft features and hesitant manner of someone who prefers the company of medication guides to people. Can we talk somewhere private? Collins asks. Reeves nods to a young pharmacy tech and leads Collins to a small break room. The walls are covered with safety posters and employee bulletins. How long had you known David? Collins begins. Since we were kids. We grew up 3 houses apart. Reeves fidgets with his ID badge. We weren't always close, but when we both ended up working here, it was like reconnecting with an old friend. Did you notice any changes in his behavior recently? Last 6 months or so? Reeves considers the question carefully. He started taking longer lunches about, I'd say 5, maybe 6 months ago. Said he had errands, but he never seemed to come back with anything. He pauses. And he was more private with his computer. Used to leave it open when he stepped away. But lately, he'd always lock it. Did he ever mention any health concerns? No, but Reeves hesitates. Thomas, anything you know could help us understand what happened to your friend. Around January, he started asking me theoretical questions about medication protocols for HIV patients, said it was for a continuing education course. Reeves looks up, his expression troubled. I didn't think much of it then, but a few weeks later, I saw him taking pills in the bathroom. He got really defensive when he realized I'd seen him. Did you tell anyone about this? Who would I tell? It wasn't my business. I figured if David wanted to talk about it, he would. Collins shifts topics. What about his relationship with Laura? How did they seem to you? Perfect, Reeves says automatically, then catches himself. I mean, that's what everyone thought. David talked about her like she hung the moon. He pauses. But at the hospital Christmas party, I overheard them arguing in the parking lot. Laura was saying something about honesty and trust. David said, "What you don't know can't hurt you." I walked away before they saw me. The county records office is housed in the basement of a building that once served as Pinewood's first bank. Collins sits at a microfiche reader, scrolling through years of property records, tax filings, and marriage certificates. Found something interesting, Detective, says clerk Marjorie Wilson, placing a folder on the desk. At 72, Marjorie has worked in the records office longer than most people in Pinewood have been alive. David Mitchell purchased a second property 18 months ago. Cash deal, under an LLC. Wouldn't have connected it, except both the LLC and the property share the same tax address as the Mitchell home. Collins opens the folder to find deed paperwork for a cabin property 20 miles outside of town, in the opposite direction from where David's body was found. Anyone else know about this? Marjorie shakes her head. Not through official channels. It was all properly filed, just discreetly. The cabin sits at the end of a winding dirt road, surrounded by tall pines. It's small but well-maintained, with a covered porch and newly installed security cameras, unusual for such a remote location. Collins approaches cautiously, gun drawn as her backup. Officer Jensen circles to the rear of the property. The front door is locked, but a window on the side shows signs of forced entry. Collins gives the signal, and they enter, clearing each room methodically. The interior is sparsely furnished: a bed, a small kitchen table, a couch facing a modest television. But what catches Collins' attention is the bathroom door. It's been reinforced with an additional deadbolt, locked from the outside. Jensen, get the bolt cutters from the car. Once inside the bathroom, Collins finds it converted into a makeshift medical room, a cabinet filled with prescription medications, a small refrigerator containing vials labeled with various dates, a journal with detailed notes on symptoms and treatments. What the hell was he doing out here? Jensen whispers. Collins opens the journal, flipping through pages of David's neat, precise handwriting. January 15th, 2024. Confirmed positive. Dr. S says with early intervention, prognosis is good. Haven't told L yet. Need time to process. February 3rd, 2024. Started treatment. Side effects manageable. L asking questions about the new vitamins. Told her they're for energy. March 17th, 2024. T almost caught me with meds today. Need to be more careful. L still doesn't suspect anything. Better this way. April 28th, 2024. Met J at the cabin. He says I should tell L, easy for him to say. He doesn't understand what's at stake. Collins closes the journal, a sick feeling forming in her stomach. Who's Jay? She mutters. Tucked beneath the journal is a photograph of David with another man, arms around each other's shoulders, standing in front of the cabin. The man's face has been scratched out with something sharp. Grantsville is a 40-minute drive from Pinewood, slightly larger but with the same small-town atmosphere. The address for Laura's sister, Rebecca Taylor, leads to a modest craftsman-style home on a quiet street. Rebecca meets Collins at the door, arms crossed defensively. At 35, she bears a striking resemblance to Laura. Same honey blonde hair, same wary blue eyes. She's not ready to talk to anyone, Rebecca says firmly. I understand this is difficult, Miss Taylor, but your sister's husband has been murdered, and she may be in danger herself. You think I don't know that? Rebecca hisses, lowering her voice. You have no idea what she's been through. Then help me understand. When did Laura find out about David's diagnosis? Rebecca's eyes widen slightly. You know about that. We're putting the pieces together. Right now, Laura is our only link to understanding what happened to David. Rebecca seems to wrestle with herself before responding. 3 weeks ago, Laura found paperwork from his doctor while looking for insurance documents. She confronted him, and he admitted he'd been diagnosed 6 months earlier. Her voice hardens. What he didn't admit, not until she demanded they both get tested, was that he deliberately exposed her. The bastard infected her on purpose. Collins tries to keep her expression neutral. And how did Laura react when she found out? How do you think? She was devastated, betrayed, furious. Rebecca glances over her shoulder, checking to see if anyone is listening. She called me that night, hysterical. I drove to Pinewood and brought her here the next morning. She hasn't been back since. Miss Taylor, I need to speak with your sister. She's not here, Rebecca admits. She left 3 days ago. Said she needed to retrieve something from their house. I tried to talk her out of it, but she insisted she'd be careful that David was away on a pharmacy conference. She looks away. She was supposed to come straight back here. I haven't heard from her since. The hospital records arrive on Collins' desk by courier late that evening. She opens the sealed envelope and begins sorting through David Mitchell's medical history. The HIV diagnosis came in January, just as the journal indicated the recommending physician was Dr. Helen Sawyer. Subsequent blood work showed successful management of the virus with medication. There were notes about counseling sessions that David had apparently attended sporadically, then stopped altogether. Collins turns to Laura's file, much thinner than her husband's first visit to Dr. Sawyer. May 22, 2024 diagnosis. HIV-positive viral load, considerably higher than David's, indicating a recent infection. A note from Dr. Sawyer. Patient distraught upon learning diagnosis. Claims no knowledge of husband's condition. Requests verification of viral strain. Attached to the file is a lab report dated May 29, 2024. It confirms that the HIV strain in Laura's blood work is genetically identical to the strain in David's samples. Dr. Sawyer's handwritten note at the bottom reads, "Informed patient of results, extreme emotional reaction. Recommended immediate psychological support, patient declined." The last page in Laura's file is a prescription for post-exposure prophylaxis medications dated 8 months earlier, long before her official diagnosis. It's signed by David, using his authority as a pharmacist. The prescription was never filled. Collins stares at the document spread across her desk, a timeline forming in her mind. David learned he was HIV positive in January. Instead of telling his wife, he deliberately exposed her to the virus. He even went so far as to write her a prescription for medications that could have prevented infection, a prescription he ensured she never received. The question now isn't just who killed David Mitchell, but whether anyone who knew the truth would blame them. Collins reaches for her phone and dials the forensics lab. "This is Detective Collins. I need you to compare the chemical compounds found on David Mitchell's body with common substances available at Pinewood Hardware." She hangs up and pulls the security footage Thomas Reeves provided from the hospital pharmacy. Fast-forwarding through days of recordings, she stops when she spots Laura at the counter on May 29th, the same day she received confirmation that David had infected her. The footage shows Laura speaking with Thomas for several minutes. There's no audio, but Laura's body language is agitated. Thomas appears to be trying to calm her. What did they discuss? And why didn't Thomas mention this encounter? As Collins ponders these questions, her computer pings with an email alert. The lab has matched traces of chemicals found on David's body to industrial-grade lye and hydrochloric acid, both available at Pinewood Hardware. Attached to the email is a still image from the store's security camera, showing Laura Mitchell purchasing several containers of each chemical the day after her meeting with Dr. Helen Sawyer, sits rigidly across from Detective Collins in her precisely organized office at Pinewood Memorial Hospital. "I should have come to you sooner," Sawyer admits, "but patient confidentiality is sacred in my profession." "When did David first come to see you?" Collins asks. "January 12th. He had been experiencing flu-like symptoms and fatigue. Given his risk factors, I suggested an HIV test." Risk factors? His wife described their marriage as monogamous. David disclosed that he had engaged in extramarital encounters, Dr. Sawyer says carefully. "He didn't provide details, and I didn't press for them." How did he react to the diagnosis? Initially with denial, then anger, then a sort of cold acceptance. Sawyer consults her notes. "He refused my recommendation to inform his wife immediately. I explained the legal and ethical obligations, but he insisted he would tell her when the time was right." "But he didn't." "No. At each follow-up, I asked if he had disclosed to Laura. Each time, he had a different excuse." Sawyer's professional composure cracks slightly. "I failed her, Detective. I believed him when he said they hadn't been intimate since his diagnosis." "When Laura came to you in May, how did she react to learning she was positive?" "She was in shock at first. Then she asked for a copy of David's initial diagnosis paperwork. When I handed her the documents, she became very still. She thanked me politely and left." Sawyer hesitates. "She did say something troubling. After I explained that with proper treatment, people with HIV can live long, healthy lives," she said. "So he wasn't just trying to infect me. He was trying to make me dependent on him for the rest of my life." Thomas Reeves nervously leads Collins to the hospital pharmacy break room. "I should have told you about Laura's visit," he admits. "I was afraid of how it would look." "How what would look, Thomas?" "That I helped her." He rubs his face. "Laura showed me David's diagnosis paperwork and asked if I'd known. Then she asked if David had ever written prescriptions for her that she didn't know about. Had he? 8 months ago, David wrote her a PP prescription, post-exposure prophylaxis. It can prevent HIV infection if taken quickly after exposure. Thomas swallows hard. It was marked as filled in our system, but there was no signature from Laura. David had overridden the system, created a false record. So he wrote a prescription that could have protected her, made sure she never received it, and then created a paper trail to cover himself. Thomas nods. When I showed Laura the falsified record, she asked if I was certain it was deliberate. I told her the truth, that the override code was David's personal code. There's no way this was a mistake. How did she respond? She thanked me, said I'd confirmed what she needed to know. Thomas hesitates. Then she asked about chemicals, which ones would dissolve organic material most effectively. I mentioned lye, hydrochloric acid. The same chemicals found on David's body, Collins says flatly. The color drains from Thomas's face. Oh God, I never thought. One more thing. Do you know anyone in David's life whose name starts with J? Only James Kelly. He and David graduated medical school together. About 2 years ago, James moved to Riverdale. David mentioned they'd reconnected. James Kelly's upscale Riverdale apartment offers a stunning river view. The surgeon meets Collins at the door in scrubs, clearly just home from a shift. After preliminary questions, Collins gets to the point. How would you describe your relationship with David Mitchell? Kelly hesitates. We were more than friends. We were involved romantically. For how long? About 18 months. David reached out after finding me on social media. Said he was questioning things, exploring parts of himself he'd suppressed. Did you know he was married? Yes, he said his marriage was essentially over, just a facade they maintained. Kelly shakes his head. I believed him because I wanted to. When did you learn David was HIV positive? January. He called me, distraught. We'd always used protection, but he wanted me to get tested immediately. I was negative. Did he tell you how he contracted it? He said it must have been from a one-night stand months earlier. 2 weeks later, he ended things between us. Said he needed to focus on his health, his marriage. But you continued to see him. The cabin was supposed to be our place. Kelly's voice hardens. In April, I pressed him about his plans. Asked if he'd told Laura about his diagnosis. He said, what she doesn't know won't hurt her. I told him that was bullshit, that he had an obligation to tell her. The last message I got from David was a text on June 4th. It said, she knows everything, I don't know what she'll do. Kelly meets Collins' gaze. I wrote back, tell the truth for once. He never replied. Officer Jensen leads Collins to the Mitchells' garage, where behind a false wall panel, they've uncovered a small chemistry setup, glass containers, protective gear, and dozens of notebooks filled with David's handwriting. Some of these date back 3 years, Jensen says. He was researching chemical reactions long before his HIV diagnosis. Collins picks up the most recent notebook. The final entry is dated June 5th. I've underestimated her. Always the quiet one, my Laura. She knows about the cabin, about James, about all of it. She found the diagnosis paperwork today. The look in her eyes, I've never seen such coldness. She asked why. What could I say? That I couldn't bear the thought of her leaving me? That I wanted her bound to me forever? She's gone to her sisters. The fail-safes are in place. If anything happens to me, the evidence against her will be found my perfect, innocent Laura. No one would believe what she's capable of. No one but me. Collins's phone buzzes with a forensics update. The chemicals in the garage match those found on David's body. Trace evidence includes fibers from Laura's vehicle. The decomposition rate suggests David was killed the night of June 5th or early morning of June 6th, right after that final journal entry. As Collins processes this, dispatch calls. Laura's car has been located at Pinewood Memorial, arriving on June 10th. Security footage shows Laura entering the hospital that night, using Dr. Sawyer's keycard to access the infectious disease department. She leaves 17 minutes later with a small package and walks toward the woods, not her car. A search team finds a backpack hidden in a hollow tree containing hospital samples labeled with both Mitchell's names and a USB drive. The drive holds hundreds of files, financial records showing David siphoning money, emails between David and James, medical records, and videos of David documenting his treatment protocol for subject L. The final video, dated June 5th, shows Laura at their kitchen table, Evidence spread before her. "I found everything, David," she says, eerily calm. "The videos, the journals, the falsified prescriptions. I know what you did to me, what you've been doing for months." She looks directly into the camera. "You thought I was your victim, your subject, your property to infect and study and control. You were wrong." The search teams comb the woods between Pinewood Memorial and the Mitchell home, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. Detective Collins walks the perimeter, piecing together the narrative that's emerging from the evidence. "Detective!" Officer Mills calls out. "Over here!" Beneath a fallen log, partially covered by leaves and soil, lies a woman's handbag. Inside, Collins finds Laura Mitchell's wallet, keys, and a handwritten note. "If you're reading this, I'm either gone or dead. Everything you need to know is at the cabin. The truth deserves to be told." A new search warrant is quickly issued for the cabin property. As dawn breaks, Collins leads a team down the winding dirt road. The cabin looks undisturbed, but forensic techs discover blood spatter on the porch, carefully cleaned but still detectable under luminol. But inside, the cabin tells a different story than the one James Kelly described. The medical room appears to have been repurposed multiple times. Hidden cameras are discovered in every room. In the bedroom closet, technicians find clothing belonging to Laura, not just a scarf, but several outfits, suggesting she'd stayed there regularly. "She knew about this place," Collins says to Jensen. "Maybe longer than we thought." Under a loose floorboard in the bedroom, they discover a sealed container holding a laptop, a journal with Laura's handwriting, and a set of DVDs labeled with dates spanning the past year. Back at the station, Collins reviews the materials. The laptop contains a meticulous documentation of Laura's own investigation into her husband, financial records, photographs of him with James Kelly, screenshots of text messages. Laura's journal begins 8 months earlier. "Something is wrong with me. Constant fatigue, night sweats. David says it's stress from teaching. Offered to make me a doctor's appointment but never followed through. Found a prescription slip in his briefcase with my name on it. When I asked about it, he said it was a mistake, meant for a patient with a similar name." Entries continue, detailing Laura's growing suspicion and surveillance of her husband. "Followed David to a cabin today. Watched through the window as he met with a man. They embraced, kissed. I should feel betrayed, but I only feel numb. Who is this stranger I married? Found strange pills in David's medicine cabinet. Researched the markings. They're antiretrovirals. Why would he need these unless..." The final entry is dated June 5th. The test came back positive, the same strain as David's. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a one-time mistake. He's been methodically infecting me, documenting it like I'm a lab rat tonight. I confront him with everything. Tonight, this ends. The DVDs contain surveillance footage from cameras Laura had installed in their home and at the cabin. The final disc shows the confrontation on June 5th. Laura presents her evidence. David's initial denials give way to cold admission. He explains his project, testing whether controlled HIV exposure could be managed through precise medication protocols. Laura was his unwitting test subject. "You're sick," Laura says on the recording. "I'm brilliant," David counters. "And now we're bound together forever. You need me, Laura, my expertise, my access to medication." The argument escalates. David grows threatening, revealing his fail-safes, evidence that would frame Laura if anything happened to him. Laura remains eerily calm, even as David becomes increasingly agitated. As he lunges toward her, the footage abruptly ends. Collins sits back, the timeline becoming clear. Whatever happened next resulted in David's death, followed by the chemical disfigurement of his body. The evidence points overwhelmingly to Laura, yet Collins senses there's more to the story. Forensics reports confirm the blood on the cabin porch belongs to both David and Laura. Additional analysis of the chemicals used on David's body shows they were applied systematically, not in a rage, but with scientific precision. "She's not running," Collins tells Chief Hargrove. "She's building a case." "A case for what?" "She killed her husband, Collins. After he deliberately infected her with HIV, documented it like a science experiment, and threatened her. This is more complex than simple murder. As they debate, an officer interrupts with news. Laura Mitchell has just walked into the police station, requesting to speak with Detective Collins. In the interview room, Laura sits calmly, dressed in simple clothing, her hands folded before her. She looks exhausted but composed. "I'm ready to tell you what happened," she says as Collins enters. "All of it." "You understand your rights?" Collins asks. "You should have an attorney." "I don't need one. I have all the evidence necessary." Laura's voice is steady. "David didn't just betray me with his affairs. He didn't just lie about his HIV status. He deliberately infected me as part of some twisted experiment. I can prove it. We found the USB drive, the videos." Laura nods. "Then you know what kind of monster he was." "What happened on June 5th, Laura? I confronted him with everything I'd discovered. His affairs, his diagnosis, his deliberate infection of me. He admitted it all eventually, even seemed proud of his work." Laura's composure slips slightly. "He told me no one would believe me, that he'd arranged evidence to make me look unstable, vindictive, that I'd be dependent on him for the rest of my life. And then he attacked me, said he couldn't risk me exposing him. We struggled." Laura looks directly at Collins. "I defended myself. I didn't mean to kill him, but I won't apologize for surviving. The chemicals, Laura, the disfigurement, that wasn't self-defense." "No, that was justice." Laura's eyes harden. "He spent months methodically destroying me from the inside out. I spent one night ensuring he couldn't hurt anyone else." As Collins contemplates this confession, a new piece of evidence arrives. Analysis of additional blood samples from the cabin reveals a third person was present the night of June 5th. The perfect husband, the perfect wife, the perfect crime. But in Detective Collins's experience, nothing is ever truly perfect. The interview room at Pinewood Police Department is stark and functional, designed to minimize distractions. Detective Collins sits across from Laura Mitchell, a digital recorder between them. Laura's public defender, Angela Hayes, sits beside her client, expression wary but professional. "For the record," Collins begins, "this is Detective Margaret Collins interviewing Laura Mitchell on June 14, 2024, regarding the death of David Mitchell. Miss Mitchell has been read her rights and has counsel present." Laura nods, her posture erect, hands clasped loosely on the table. She looks different from the woman in the photos around town, thinner, with shadows beneath her eyes, but her gaze is steady, almost resolute. "Let's fill in the gaps," Collins continues. "You've admitted to killing your husband in self-defense and to subsequently using chemicals to disfigure his remains. But our forensic team found evidence that a third person was present at the cabin that night. Who was it?" Laura exchanges a glance with her attorney, who nods slightly. "Thomas Reeves," Laura says. "He came to warn me." Collins keeps her expression neutral, despite her surprise. "Warn you about what?" "After I showed Thomas the evidence about the falsified prescription, he became concerned. He started looking into other prescriptions David had written." Laura takes a slow breath. "The morning of June 5th, Thomas called me, saying he'd discovered something troubling and needed to speak with me in person. We met at the elementary school during my lunch break." "What did he tell you?" "That David had been writing prescriptions for various medications under my name for over a year. Antiretrovirals, yes, but also immunosuppressants that would have made me more susceptible to the virus." Laura's voice remains steady, almost clinical. "Thomas had found a research protocol hidden in David's computer files at work, detailed plans for what he called accelerated viral integration in an immunocompromised subject. I was patient L. And this is what prompted your confrontation with David?" "Yes, I already had suspicions. I'd been tracking David's movements, documenting his behavior. But what Thomas found confirmed everything." Laura leans forward slightly. "Thomas was afraid for me. He knew what David was capable of. He insisted on coming with me to the cabin that night." "Why the cabin? Why not confront David at your home?" "Because I needed to control the environment. I'd discovered the cameras David had installed at our house. At the cabin, I had installed my own." A ghost of a smile crosses Laura's face. David wasn't the only one who could be methodical. Collins makes a note. "Walk me through what happened that night." I told David I wanted to talk someplace private, suggested the cabin, pretended I'd just discovered its existence from financial records. He was surprised, but agreed. Laura's hands tightened slightly. Thomas waited outside, out of sight. I confronted David with everything: the affairs, the HIV diagnosis, the deliberate infection, the falsified prescriptions, the experiment. How did he react? At first, he denied everything. Then, when I showed him the evidence, he changed tactics, became almost proud, explained his methodology, how careful he'd been with dosages, how the results could eventually be beneficial to science. Laura's composure cracked slightly. He actually believed what he was doing was important, that I should be grateful to be part of it. Then what happened? I told him I was going public with everything. He said no one would believe me, that he'd been establishing a pattern for months, making me seem unstable, paranoid. He had records of prescriptions for antipsychotics in my name, emails he'd fabricated where I threatened him. Laura's voice hardens. He said even if people believed me, it was too late. I was already infected. I would need his expertise, his access to medication, that we were bound together forever by what he'd done. And that's when he attacked you? Yes. He lunged at me, grabbed me by the throat. I fought back. There was a knife on the counter. I'd been cutting fruit earlier. I grabbed it. Laura looks down at her hands. I didn't mean to stab him so many times, but once I started, I couldn't stop. Where was Thomas during this? He heard the struggle and came inside. By then, David was already... Laura trails off. Thomas was horrified, wanted to call the police immediately. I convinced him to wait, to help me think it through. To help you dispose of the body? No. Laura meets Collins's gaze. Thomas left before that part. He said he couldn't be part of it, but he promised not to say anything. He understood why I had to do what I did. Which was what exactly? Make sure no one would glorify David Mitchell. Make sure his research died with him. Laura's voice is ice. He spent months methodically destroying me from the inside out. I couldn't let his work survive. Collins switches tracks. After you killed David, you used chemicals to disfigure his body. Where did you get the knowledge to do that? I'm a teacher, detective. I know how to research. Laura's tone is matter-of-fact. And David had quite the chemistry setup in our garage. It seemed fitting to use his own tools. Then you transported his body to the woods outside of town. Yes? Alone? A moment's hesitation. Yes. Collins doesn't press the point yet. And the hospital visit on June 10th? What were you retrieving from the infectious disease department? The original viral samples, David's and mine, I needed proof that the strains matched. Definitive evidence that he had infected me deliberately. Laura leans back. I took Dr. Sawyer's key card from her office during an appointment. I knew the medical evidence would be crucial if this ever came to trial. You were building a case for self-defense from the beginning. I was ensuring the truth would be known. As the interview continues, Chief Hargrove interrupts with an urgent message. Collins excuses herself and steps outside. We found something at the Mitchell house, Hargrove says. A hidden safe in the bedroom. Inside was a flash drive with a video recording David made the morning of June 5th. What's on it? A confession of sorts. Mitchell explaining his research, his plans for Laura. It's disturbing, Collins. He talks about her like she's not even human. Hargrove rubs his forehead. DA's seen it. Says it substantially corroborates Laura's account of David's intentions. When Collins returns to the interview room, Laura seems to read something in her expression. You found it, Laura says quietly. His final recording. Yes, but there's something else we need to discuss. The forensic team found traces of a sedative in David's system. He was drugged before he was stabbed. For the first time, Laura's composure falters completely. I didn't... Mrs. Mitchell, her attorney interjects. I advise you not to answer that question. But Laura continues. I put it in his drink, not to kill him, just to make him sleep so I could search the cabin for more evidence. I didn't plan to confront him that night, but he didn't drink enough. He was just slowed down. When he attacked me, he was impaired but still dangerous. Collins studies Laura carefully. There's one more thing. David's body would have been too heavy for you to move alone. Someone helped you after Thomas left. Who was it? Laura remains silent for a long moment. Her attorney leans in to whisper something, but Laura shakes her head. "Rebecca," she finally says. "My sister. I called her after Thomas left. She came immediately, helped me, finish it." "Your sister was an accomplice to disposing of the body?" "She was protecting me, like she always has." Laura's eyes fill with tears for the first time. "Please leave her out of this. She only helped because she knew what David had done to me." The district attorney's office is crowded with legal personnel reviewing the Mitchell case. Collins stands beside DA Eleanor Winters, a veteran prosecutor known for her sharp mind and pragmatic approach. "It's a mess," Winters admits. "Premeditated murder, tampering with evidence, obstruction of justice, but also one of the most compelling self-defense cases I've ever seen." "The sedative complicates the self-defense claim," Collins points out. "True, but David Mitchell was conducting an unauthorized medical experiment on his wife, deliberately infecting her with HIV and documenting it. His own recordings show he planned to continue controlling her through her medical needs." Winters sighs. "No jury in this county would convict her once they see what he did." "What about Rebecca Taylor and Thomas Reeves?" "Accessories after the fact, at minimum. But again, sympathetic circumstances." Winters shuffles through the case files. "I'm inclined to offer a deal. Manslaughter for Laura, reduced charges for the others, contingent on full cooperation." "The town will be divided on this," Collins says. "The town will never be the same once the full story comes out." 2 days later, Collins drives to Riverdale General Hospital. James Kelly meets her in the doctor's lounge, still in surgical scrubs. "I'm not sure what more I can tell you, Detective," he says, pouring himself coffee with a slightly trembling hand. "We found your DNA at the cabin, Dr. Kelly, not just from your previous visits with David, from the night of June 5th. The coffee cup freezes halfway to his lips. "I don't know what you're talking about." Laura Mitchell has been very forthcoming, but there are still gaps in her story. Thomas Reeves has also made a statement. Collins watches Kelly carefully. "We know you were there that night. What we don't know is your role." Kelly sets the cup down, coffee sloshing over the rim. "I wasn't supposed to be there. David called me that afternoon, sounding desperate. Said Laura had discovered everything, that his project was in jeopardy. Asked me to meet him at the cabin." He sinks into a chair. "I had no idea what he was talking about. I thought he meant our relationship." "What time did you arrive?" "Around 9:30. I saw Laura's car, but decided to wait outside until she left. Then I heard shouting. I went to the window and saw..." Kelly swallows hard. "David was ranting about some experiment, about how Laura would never escape him now. Then he attacked her. It happened so fast. She grabbed a knife and he just kept coming at her, like he didn't even see it." "Did you intervene?" "I rushed in after the first stab. Tried to pull David away, but he was like a man possessed. He turned on me, and in the struggle, Laura stabbed him again. And again." Kelly covers his face. "By the time it was over, he had at least a dozen wounds. I checked for a pulse. There was nothing I could do." "What about Thomas Reeves? Was he there?" Kelly looks confused. "No, it was just the three of us." Collins makes a note of this discrepancy. "What happened next?" "Laura was in shock. I tried to convince her to call the police, that it was clearly self-defense. But she was fixated on David's research, said it had to be destroyed along with him." Kelly sighs. "I'm a doctor. I took an oath to do no harm. I couldn't. I left before she began whatever she did to his body. I've been living with this nightmare ever since." "Why didn't you come forward?" "Because I believed Laura was the victim. Because I'd failed to see what kind of man David really was. Because I was ashamed of my own role in all of it." Kelly meets Collins' gaze. "What happens now?" "That depends on the full truth coming out." 1 week later, the Pinewood Press runs its most read edition in history. The headline is simple but shocking. "Beloved Pharmacist's Dark Secret. HIV Experiment Leads to Deadly Confrontation." The article details the case against David Mitchell, including his deliberate infection of his wife, his meticulous documentation of her symptoms, and his plans to continue controlling her through her medical dependency. It also covers Laura's methodical investigation, the final confrontation, and the roles of those involved afterward. The town is indeed divided. Some see Laura as a victim who fought back against unimaginable betrayal. Others cannot reconcile her calculated actions after the killing with true self-defense. The hospital establishes a review of all of David's work, concerned there may be other victims of his experiments. In the end, the district attorney's deal is accepted. Laura Mitchell pleads guilty to manslaughter, receiving a 5-year sentence with eligibility for parole after 18 months. Thomas Reeves and Rebecca Taylor receive probation for their roles after the fact. James Kelly, whose testimony proved crucial in understanding the events of June 5th, is granted immunity in exchange for his full cooperation. 6 months later, Detective Collins visits the women's correctional facility in Salem. Laura Mitchell looks healthier than the last time Collins saw her. There's color in her cheeks, and the haunted look in her eyes has diminished. "How are you doing?" Collins asks, once they're seated in the visitation room. "I'm on a new treatment protocol. The prognosis is good." Laura's smile is small but genuine. "I've started teaching again. GED classes for the other inmates. I'm glad to hear it." "You didn't come all this way to check on my health, Detective." Collins acknowledges this with a nod. "I've been thinking about your case, about the discrepancies in the various accounts. Such as, you said Thomas Reeves was at the cabin that night. James Kelly says he wasn't. Thomas initially denied being there, then changed his story to match yours." Collins leans forward. "Why protect Thomas? He was already implicated in helping you afterward." Laura is quiet for a moment. "Perhaps I wasn't the only one David betrayed." "Meaning?" "Thomas loved David once, long before I came into the picture. David chose me instead, but he kept Thomas close, dependent, controlled him just like he tried to control me." Laura meets Collins' gaze. "Thomas discovered David's research months before I did. He tried to warn me in his own way, the comments about the prescription, the questions about my health, but he was afraid. David had something on him too. So on June 5th, Thomas didn't just come to warn me. He came to stop David. He put the sedative in David's drink before I arrived." Laura looks down at her hands. "We agreed to protect each other. His truth, my truth. They're both real in their own way." "And James Kelly?" "He arrived after it was done, after David was already dead. He helped clean up, helped make it look more like self-defense than it was. Then his conscience got the better of him." Laura's expression turns thoughtful. "The perfect murder doesn't exist, Detective. Just like the perfect marriage doesn't exist. There's always something beneath the surface." Collins considers this. "Do you regret what you did?" "I regret that it was necessary." Laura's voice is quiet but firm. "David took something from me that I can never get back. Not just my health, but my trust, my sense of safety. He turned our marriage into a laboratory and me into a subject." "And the others involved? Do you think justice was served there?" "Thomas, Rebecca, James, they were all victims of David in their own way. He had a talent for finding people's weaknesses, their needs, and exploiting them." Laura pauses. The person who stabbed David Mitchell wasn't the same Laura who taught 3rd grade and baked cookies for the hospital staff. That Laura died the moment she learned what her husband had done to her. Who I am now, I'm still figuring that out. As Collins leaves the correctional facility, she reflects on the case that has redefined her career. The Mitchell murder revealed how little we truly know about those closest to us, how beneath the surface of the most perfect-seeming relationship can lie currents of deception, betrayal, and ultimately violence. The perfect husband, the perfect wife, the perfect small town, all illusions, shattered by the truth. In Pinewood, the Mitchell house stands empty, a silent reminder that appearances are often just that, surfaces beneath which darker truths wait to be discovered.